research on the Belgian justice system interested a larger audience was the initial question for this second part. When the IAP network started in 2007, Justice and Society, justice studies was an emerging field of research at the crossroads of history, anthropology, sociology and political science, criminology and legal studies. There was a growing awareness that justice should be studied both as a cultural human production in the field of the humanities, philosophy, language, history, law, art history, and as a human activity from an anthropological perspective, behavioral sciences, as well as from a social perspective as the product of interaction between individuals and their environment, the social sciences. Today, justice is not only an emerging research field, but also a major issue in societal debate. IAP work has demonstrated how important it is to invest in multidisciplinary and multidimensional scientific analysis of the relations between society, justice, and populations in order to understand and adequately respond to the so-called crisis of justice in democratic societies today. Since its second phase, the network has been expanded to reflect this multiplicity of approaches within one integrated field of social science and humanities. From 7 teams of historians and legal historians to 14 partners, 11 Belgian and 3 foreign universities and research institutions. From the field of history, legal studies, sociology, criminology, political science, management studies, and archival science. They have brought together a variety of social science and historical methods, ranging from contextual legal history to social policy analysis, discourse analysis, prosopography, and criminological fieldwork. The IAP partners have jointly and successfully supervised 20 PhDs over the past 10 years.
Indeed. Pardon. Indeed, 20 PhDs. That's quite a lot. Successfully finished or at the verge of being finished. And the multiplicity of approaches, indeed. And despite the variety of partners and perspectives united in the EAP network, many of our researchers and projects have addressed similar central issues. The network's general feeling of unease at the start of its first phase about the lack of knowledge on interactions between populations, justice and security systems has proven to be justified, both by empirical research, but also as a result of growing mediatization and political debate about the so-called Belgian justice crisis. See, for example, the Supreme Court's President Discourse of the 15th of May 2016. The EAP network already took this problem seriously 10 years ago, but its researchers quickly discovered that discussions between justice actors on the one hand, journalists on the other, and then political actors often remain superficial and devoid of nuance. The explanations for this are unfortunately quite simple. There was a decades-long absence of high-quality, multidisciplinary research on the topic. There were the difficulties to address the media in a complex multicultural society, and there has been a lack of social science culture in the traditional training of judicial personnel. The first EAP has started to tackle this and fill this void, so to speak, started by examining the relations between justice and institutions, focusing on the interrelations between political and normative discourses, everyday judicial practices, and the social composition of justice personnel, the people of justice. within the framework of broader processes of state formation, contestation and disintegration. Contexts of crisis, of revolutions have been privileged moments of observation for these interactions. The second, current, because it's still running for a few months, the current EAP network further elaborated this first layer by analyzing the interactions between justice, police and penal systems on the one hand, and citizens' experiences and expectations on the other, both in normal periods and in times of crisis. A specific cutting-edge aspect of the network's research, we can say in all modesty, is the integration of various social sciences perspectives within a historical reflection. This has implied positioning current issues, current concepts, current perceptions, reforms and processes of change in the judicial domain in their specific historical dynamic, while at the same time examining them in their relationships to other factors of social change. Departing from the problems faced today by Belgian justice, such as public distrust in justice, inequality in police proactivity or judicial treatment, manipulation of procedures at the highest level of the state, at the Fortis case, for example, the strong media attention or mediatization of all kinds of public fears of crime, all these problems have been interesting points of departure for reflection for our EAP research. EAP researchers have been digging up underlying mechanisms, archaic procedures, and the dysfunctioning of competing institutions, or what has been called normative blurring, a notion used to describe the specific Belgian justice crisis at the end of the Cold War. This profoundly original approach, not always well appreciated by justice actors, however, has revealed, one can say, a kind of path dependence of Belgian justice, resulting from the traumatizing experiences of recurring occupations and colonization. Taken together, the various EAP research projects support the argument that local, national and transnational practices of justice are interlinked through a kind of butterfly effect. Local difficulties in police interactions with young migrants in Brussels, for example, can be intertwined with major distrust towards Western judicial interference in colonial and post-colonial conflicts, which is what is called entangled history today.
Within only 10-year time, the IAP partners have made 10 times more data, figures, sources, visual material accessible to the research community and to stakeholders than during the prior 50 years. Next to traditional social science tools, such as interviews, surveys, and panels, the use of written documentation produced throughout 200 years of justice history has been very important for the network. Thanks to our patrimonial partners, the State Archives and CG-SOMA, the university teams were able to discover new sleeping beauties. And now we just cover some of our source and traditional deliverables, the paper deliverable, and let later Françoise propose a vision in a more vivid documentation like the people and the digital source and material. So, for instance, we had this series of Justice and Society by the State Archives with 7 publications. Also, a series devoted to monographs by Dicoeur-Lacharte, Justice and Samenleving, Justice et Société. The important collective volumes of the major IAP International Conference will be published in a book series by Springer, Jus Gentium, Comparative Perspectives on Law and Justice. But also we produce two important books and material for a greater audience, like this encyclopedia, this Handbook of Belgian Justice, and also this coffee table book in two versions, Dutch and French speaking, Les mots de la justice, Het verhaal van justitie, The words of justice. This is one of our achievements, and now I will let Margo present our guest speaker, Louise Jackson, and invite her to deliver a keynote paper.
Yeah, we will move on to, in fact, the most important part, because our talking, you've heard it for several years now, and it's time for an outsider's view, as we have promised. Not a very normal outsider. It's a person who has been active in the network or has accompanied the functioning of the network for several years. Louise Jackson, professor in modern social history at Edinburgh University. She has been member of the advisory board of the project for several years, and she has, at several phases in the project, provided very valuable comments and feedback on both the scientific functioning and also on the whole networking aspect, the functioning as what was part of that. Simply to quickly introduce Louise, to give you an idea that we have an outsider with quite a broad view. Louise's research is concerned with both histories of women and gender and history of children and youth, and then crossed with histories of crime and policing. She has published several books, the first important book, was on child sexual abuse in Victorian England. But then she has also moved to other horizons in research and published, the next one was on women police officers in Great Britain, for which she has done very interesting research because she has combined oral history material with all kind of very in-depth archival research of the police. Other recent publication concerns the policing of youth, so I guess Louise has maybe also been quite, triggered by the movie that we have watched. Police-youth relationships are also part of her interest. We are very grateful that she came over specifically for this final event, and I now give her the floor.